In part 1, I was just starting to lope on Shooter. Stick around and see how it all turns out. Welcome back to Becky, Amio Horse Training, and this is part 2 of Shooter's first ride. In our last section, we left off with me just starting to lope on him, and I had just asked JD if he was ready for the zoomies because I knew Shooter was going to be the type that kind of wanted to zoom around the round pen quite a little bit. We talked a lot about balance and how when a horse is in balance, they will either speed up, slow down, or buck. And we see Shooter do a lot of speeding up and slowing down throughout this section of his first ride. Once I go ahead and pick him up into a lope, with JD's help here, he does kind of scoot and grab his butt quite a bit. I don't let him go very far before I break him down and put him into an emergency stop. We see him kind of reach out. He's got a big old stride on him. And we get, half a lap around the round pen before I put him into an emergency stop. He was wanting to stop there anyway, so I just used it. And again, this gives us lots of confidence that we'll be able to stop our horse in the event we need to for an emergency down the road. And I like how this colt really down regulates here. He walks off really quiet. We see he's not bothered by what just happened. If he was truly bothered by it, he probably would have, jigged a little bit, tried to take off again, elevated his head, and instead he lowered his head and walked off quietly back the other direction. So far we have set him up to go back and forth, change directions, bend, follow his nose around, down regulate, and pick up his left lead so far with a rider on his back. Now we're going to try it to the right. This is his first time loping to the right with a rider on his back. And we're going to see here that he really loses his balance to the right side. If you've been following up to this point, Shooter's good side is his left side, his weaker side is his right side, and we're going to see it here. We're really going to see the lack of balance in this colt and where I make a really big mistake. Let's watch this again in slow motion. So as we go around, I get too far ahead of him. I'm up out of the saddle and my right hand is way out there. Partially because I'm trying to guide him, but he can see that and he's responding to it. And he's also responding to me getting too far up out of the saddle and I make him lose his balance. That's why it's so important to stay balanced and have a really strong core and strong legs on these colts. He tries to do it again. I give him a mild correction and we're able to go again. And I go ahead and continue on. He even crossfires there briefly. I go ahead and continue on and have JD continue to send us around this direction because I want to end this direction on a really good series of loping strides. You see here, I freeze frame it here to show you guys, look how far back I have to lean in this saddle to help him find his balance point. And every horse is going to be different, but most of them are going to like you further back on them than leaning too far forward. And once I find a good place there, I go ahead and bend him around, do the emergency stop, go back to rubbing and petting on him and rubbing him all over, down regulate him, get him quiet, get him soft. He's really soft on that rein. I go ahead and change directions with him and walk off quietly. This is a great example of a horse that's really confident in himself. He's really quiet. What we're doing is working. Every time we see this colt lower his neck and head like that, we know that we're doing a good job. That's how we're being evaluated for the work that we're doing with him. When we know that we can get him to go quiet after every time we speed him up, after every time that we scare him a little bit by making him go a little bit faster than he wants to, and then this colt lowers his neck and head like that, we're doing a good job. That's how we're being evaluated for what we're doing here. So I go ahead and speed up again. You see him push his nose to the ground like that. That's what the nose flies do to them. I talked about this a lot in my last session, how the nose flies will cause them to bob their head a lot when they sting them. And so we try to, get ahead of them by fly spraying as good as we can. We get a really good lope this direction. Like we said, this left side is his good side. He even asked to lower his neck and head there briefly for one stride. He breaks down to a trot on his own, and I go ahead and use this opportunity to bend him around and get him soft. Every time that we bend them, they're going to get softer, they're going to get more responsive to the bit pressure, and they're going to get quiet and down regulate. So we're going to call that good for all the loping, and I'm going to head to the center of the round pen where JD is going to help me back him up. Now, it didn't occur to me until I was in the moment of asking him to back up that I didn't practice this on the ground with him at all. And I kind of felt like a dummy for doing it. I will still ask them to back up while I'm on their back, even if I didn't practice it on the ground. I had all these colts that I was starting at the same time, and you kind of forget who you've done what with, and you kind of have them all in the same place, and you just think, oh, I did that with that one already. And I've done a lot of backing up in hand with Shooter, but not with the bit. And so what he's more responsive to is the halter, where some colts are more responsive if JD taps them in the chest or he taps them on the front of their feet. Sometimes JD will carry a lunge whip and or like a dressage whip, and he'll tap them on the front of their feet, and they'll back up for me pretty easily like that. But in this case, the backup was better when he just used it manually by holding on to the bottom of the halter. Now I'm working on turn on the forehand. This is something that I do every single first ride. You only get one chance to do a first ride, and so you throw as much at them as you possibly can in your firsts with every horse that I work on. And I always do as many as I can, turns on the forehand by myself. If I need JD to come in, he'll come in and push on their hip a little bit for me and bend them around. And I'm trying to keep that front end still, move that hip over. And I quit. As soon as they give in that direction, I quit. I'm not going to get too greedy and ask for multiple steps. I just want him to move off of leg pressure and move that hip over. I give Shooter a little bit of time to think about it before I immediately go to asking him to move the other side over. And JD moves his position in the round pen. Now, his position is just as important to our ride as my leg position, my cues, and my release. I ask him to bend his head over, and I put that leg into him to move the hip over. I don't get greedy. I don't ask for more than one step. It's kind of like backing. As soon as you get them to start to think about it, then you release the pressure when you're first beginning to teach them. See how quickly I release? I go back to petting on him. This colt looks to JD for support. And again, it's so important that he's in there helping me with this first ride. We see a really nice turn there, and I go ahead and quit with that. And now I'm going to walk Shooter out away from JD because we're going to do the rope handling next. And I need to walk him out away from JD so JD can come in and start swinging that rope all around us. Now, I've done a ton of groundwork with Shooter, preparing him for the rope. So this isn't brand new information, but the whole experience is brand new because he's not had a person walk up to him like JD's going to walk up to him with the rope while I'm sitting on his back. Generally, I'm the one doing all the rope handling. I'm doing it from the ground, and I'm the one that's walking all around him. So this is a different experience for him, even though he's been exposed to the rope before. Now, I've done an entire video on why it takes two people to ride a horse, and the entire video focused on getting the horse used to handling the rope. And I will tell you guys, I am a big chicken when it comes to training a horse to a rope and exposing them the first time. And I have found that it works just better for me and for the horse if I can handle the rope off of them on the very first ride. Like I said, the more first that I can get out of the way on the very first ride, the better off I am on every single horse that I ride. Because it's like I've broke the ice. Like I already know that they can handle it. And then I'm good to go. And I have that confidence in my mind that they've seen it already. We've done it. We can do it again. So JD starts from far away. And he just starts swinging it. And it gets kind of boring here. But if you watch, it really only takes a few minutes to get this horse used to this rope and JD swinging it. He tries to show them from every different angle, and he tries to get the sound going. That's generally what these colts are afraid of, is the whooshing sound and the buzzing sound that the rope makes over their head and above their ears. And that's what tends to bother them. And so JD just gets it whipping really good as he swings it. He swings it out in front of them, and he coils it back up all around them, doing his best to get them used to it. And once he feels that they're accepting of it, then he hands the rope to me. JD has entire control of this whole situation. He's doing the lie detector test. He's trying to feel them over to make sure that they're feeling okay and they're accepting of all of this. And we get a little bit of reaction, not that big of a deal. The colt comes right back and wants to see it again. And my job is just to sit up there and be a support system at this point. It's my job to sit there and pet and rub on him, be really relaxed, just give this colt some security as JD plays around with this foreign object in front of him. This whole process takes less than 5 minutes, and it usually takes even less than that on every ride that we do together. And it just takes a lot of confidence, a lot of patience, working through this colt's trust, and, being centered and balanced in everything that you do. JD and I pretty much already know the outcome of how this is going to go. We've done it together so many times that we know how we're going to finish this ride on this horse. And JD has watched enough horses to know that when they're okay and when they're not okay with something. Even though Shooter is, elevating his head a little bit, he takes a step away every once in a while. He's not serious about it. If he was really serious about it, he'd be spinning and running away. He's like, I'm not sure I really like that, but I guess I'll just hang out here with you if that's okay with you. That's kind of how Shooter is. And he's okay with JD during all of this, and his eye is soft. That's another thing. If his eye were really big and his head were super high and he was bracy and I was having to force him to stand there next to JD, that would be a pretty good indicator that he wasn't ready for this. But really, there's just little pieces that cause him to not be okay. Every once in a while, when he hears a zing of the rope, he'll step away, or he elevates his head a little bit, or, depending on the angle that JD is swinging the rope, that causes him to step away, like right there. And JD just keeps on doing the same thing over and over and over again, so this colt understands the repetition, and he understands what is being expected of him. Right now, we're not going to try to drag anything just yet. We're just getting him used to that thing being swung out there. We are trying to let him know that this has nothing to do with him. It's not about him. It's just an object. We just need him to stand there while we're playing around with it. A really easy game to play with them, whether you're on the ground or on their back, is just throwing that rope out in front of them underhand like that. If you can't swing a rope, you can always throw the rope out in front of them. Whether you're holding a lunge line, a lead rope, or a lariat rope, you can throw that rope out in front of them. It never has to touch them, but just them seeing that rope be thrown out there and then gathered back up in front of them is a really good way to desensitize them to a rope. It never even has to touch them, because he's still not really sure about the swinging part. He's still not 100% there with us. But we do see him lower his head occasionally. We see him lick and chew occasionally. And JD just keeps on doing it. He stays really steady with him throughout the entire thing. He always reassures him by coming back and petting him on his head, rubbing him all over. I rub him as much as I can. All of us are really quiet. We don't get too worked up over anything. So as JD is doing a final rub all over him with that rope, he just hands it to me, and then I go to rubbing him all over with it. I build my loop just like I do every time that I've shown the rope to him before. And the colt kind of focuses on JD just a little bit. He wants to follow him around. And then I start building my loop, and he's totally okay with it. And honest, you guys, this is about how it goes every time I do it with the colt the first time. Every once in a while they'll move around, but I teach them that I quit when they stop moving. And that's how I teach a lot of horses how to do most things, is by quitting the action whenever they stop moving. And he kind of wants to just lower his neck and head and be relaxed. You know, he's not even bothered by the sound of the swing, or when the rope swings out in front of him, or when it comes backwards. You know, and that's probably one of the scariest part, is when that rope gets pulled back towards them. You know, it's something is coming to them. And he's perfectly quiet. He cocks a foot. He's okay with everything that's going on. You know, he's about done for the day. He's had enough. And, you know, we've kind of played on that with this horse. It is a very warm day and he's tired, and we're just kind of capitalizing on that. But we also don't want to make him so tired that he gets crabby either, because what I have found with Shooter and most horses is that, you know, getting them overtired, overexposed, we tend to lose their attention. We tend to get them crabby, and they get resistant then as well. So you kind of have to know your horse really well to know when they've hit their threshold. But he's been totally okay with this up until this point. I'm going to rope the barrel here shortly, but because I just added sand in my arena, it's really hard to drag this barrel over towards me like I normally do and dismount at the barrel. So we play a little bit different game this time. I still rope the barrel and I drag it towards us, and it is really sticky in this sand, and Shooter's totally okay with it. He's fine with it. He looks at it, but he's non-responsive to it at all. He's aware that it's there. Remember, we've worked enough times in this round pen with a lick tub in the round pen that it's just another thing. It's no big deal. You know, it's just something else. And I can only get the lick tub so close to me before I end up losing it. And JD takes it and he tries playing around with the asking Shooter to come over and pick him up. So he stands up on the barrel. This is a brand new thing that we've started trying to do with our first rides. And remember from the very beginning, Shooter is a little bit skeptical of anything new, and he's a little bit hesitant to walk over to JD, and as he should be, as he usually is. And we just have to be a little bit more patient with him as he walks up to JD. All the other colts that I've been working on, they've been perfectly fine with this. They come up to him, no big deal. But Shooter always questions things. He has a little bit more self-preservation than the other colts do. And I'm just trying to teach him to get up to that barrel. JD always reassures him, pets and rubs on his head, and we try to get him back up to that barrel a little bit closer. So it takes a few steps to get him up to it, but he eventually comes up to it. And we do a lot of petting and rubbing on him to let him know that it's okay. I know this took a really long time to get through, but it was so well worth it because we made so much progress with this colt, made leaps and bounds of progress, and especially accepting having somebody right up above him like that. This was a huge, huge deal for this colt, and it's going to carry through with him for the rest of his life. Remember, you only get one first ride, and you only get one first time to do all these things with this horse, and we got to make sure that we follow through, and it's a good experience. Don't ever pass up an opportunity to continue to rub and pet on them and reassure them that everything is okay. JD even goes back up and pets on him again. It's really important that your ground person reassures them. And once he takes another step towards this lick tub, I'm going to pedal my stirrups and give him the cue that I'm going to be dismounting. And that lets him know that I'm going to be stepping off of him, and it reassures him, and he's not surprised by what I'm about to do. And this sets the stage for the rest of his life. He'll know that that's the cue to get off. I appreciate you guys watching. I sure appreciate you hanging out with me and staying tuned for part 2 of Shooter's first ride. Stay tuned as I continue to post every ride hereafter as I get it edited and posted to YouTube. Thanks for watching.